Everyone, and welcome back. My name is Diane Donnelly. I am with the Donnelly Group of Keller Williams Flagship of Maryland, and I welcome you back to Facts Over Fears, a series born from questions and comments I've been hearing in my real estate practice. The series is designed to bring timely information to you when you need it, and it's a series designed to help you make decisions based on facts and not emotions. Today, we're going to talk with Tara Frame of Frame and Frame about a much avoided and critical topic, estate planning. Tara, hello, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello, Diane. Thank you so much for having me on today. My name is Tara Frame, and I am an attorney with Frame and Frame. We've been around since 1954 when my father founded the practice, and he retired from us. He practiced for almost 60 years before he retired. So, yeah, my part of the practice, we have two attorneys in our firm, myself and then Erica Redmond. I focus on the estate planning, wills, trusts, powers of attorney, estate administration, and elder law. And she focuses on family law, personal injury, and guardianships. So with my part of the practice, we really try to help people ease their worries by helping them protect their families. And we do this by learning about the client and their families. We provide personalized solutions for their legal issues, and we really try to customize their wills, trusts, and long-term care plans. So our main focus is preparing strategies to protect family assets and property from divorce, creditors, predators, and nursing homes, while also preserving family peace and harmony.
Okay, that was really well said. So thank you. Tara, I wanted to start off our call today with a couple of stats that were staggering to me. The CDC says that as of today, April 24th, 2020, there are 828,000 cases of coronavirus in the US and 46,379 deaths. And I want to break that down even a little bit further to talk about the demographics of that. Over 11,000, almost 12,000 cases are for ages 18 and under. 22,700 are 18 to 44. 225,000 are 45 to 64, and then it goes on. So that means that 260,000 affected people were under the age of 64. And they're dying. There are people, just like the flu, these people, they're dying. My fear is that they did not have an estate plan completed.
Mm-hmm.
The reason that I have that fear is I didn't when my father was sick. I'll share that story in a minute with you. But I think that when you're under 64, you're not thinking something like that is going to happen. You're not anticipating that a flu is going to take your life. You're not anticipating being on a ventilator because of a flu or a virus. So you may not be planning. I wanted to ask you to dispel a couple of myths for me. First, estate planning is only for people who are rich and have a ton of assets. Is that true?
Yeah, so that is definitely not true. I think statistically, I looked this up recently, is of American adults, less than 40% of American adults have any estate planning documents in place. So, of course, you're not expecting for something, the worst to happen, but, accidents happen every day. People have injuries, they have unexpected illnesses. So, it's something you definitely want to pre-plan for. And this is not something for just the wealthy. If you have children under the age of 18, you need to appoint a guardian. If you don't do that, the court is going to decide who is going to be caring for your children. So this is something you would want to decide, while you're in a healthy state of mind. You want that to be your decision, not a court to decide for you. You want to decide who's going to make your financial decisions. You're more likely to be disabled or incapacitated than you are to actually die. So if you're incapacitated, you're in the hospital, you're not able to make financial decisions. One of the most important pieces is to have a financial power of attorney that's going to allow someone to pay your bills, file your taxes, get information from your insurance company, your mortgage company. And then the second piece of that is a healthcare power of attorney and advance directive. So if you're not able, if you're on a ventilator and you're not able to communicate your wishes with your doctors, your healthcare power of attorney or appointment of healthcare agent is a legal document that's going to appoint the person that you want to make your healthcare decisions for you. Someone that you know, hopefully talk to ahead of time, and they know what your wishes are, and they'll be able to make those decisions in accordance with your desires and your wishes if you are not in a state of mind to do that for yourself.
So we're going to talk about what is included in an entire estate plan. But what does your consultation look like? Someone comes to you and says, I just got married and I want to start my estate planning process. What does it look like to that person when they come to talk with you? What kinds of questions do you ask them?
Yeah, we try to make it as easy and painless as possible because people think, oh, this is going to be such a hard process, but it's really not. We set up an appointment, we send them a questionnaire so we can get ahead of time some basic information so that we're ready to talk about that. They don't need to bring anything with them. Right now we're doing all telephone conferences and video conferences. So we just go over that questionnaire and find out about their family. Do they have children, the ages of the children? Are there any special needs children? Because if you have a special needs child, we have to deal with that in a little bit different way than if you don't. We're going to go over your assets. And your assets is what do you own? Do you have a house? Your bank accounts? Do you have any life insurance policies? Do you have any investment accounts? Your retirement accounts? So this is all the information that we try to get on the questionnaire ahead of time, and then we'll go over all of that and then discuss the options with the client, whether a will is best for them or is a trust better for them, and then discuss what the pros and cons are, and then they decide which is best for their family, and then we move forward with whatever plan that is that they choose.
Is it a one-time thing? You do your will and estate plan, and then you put it in your drawer, hope you're not going to die, you hope you don't need it, and then you just go on the rest of your life? Or is it something that is a document that lives and that you should go and revisit and make sure that things haven't changed?
Yeah, I mean, my recommendation is that everyone should take out their documents, whatever those documents are, and review them at least every 3 to 5 years. Because let's say you name your best friend or your neighbor as a power of attorney or custodian of your children, and then 5 years from now, maybe that relationship has kind of dwindled, or you're not as close as you once were, but you still have them in your documents. You probably want to change that. Another situation is people who get divorced is a big issue. If you name your spouse as your medical power of attorney or your financial power of attorney, and then you get divorced and you don't change that document is still in effect. So basically you could have your ex-spouse or your ex-partner making these decisions for you when that might not be what you want. So we always recommend that people take out their documents and review them. Again, if we have a trust plan that we've done, a revocable trust, that's a document that changes with the family. So we often will do amendments as, grandchildren are born, or they have another child, or, situations change. And it's easy to do. We just do amendments, and that document or that plan changes along with the family. So, the way we do it, it's a living document, and it's going to grow and change as the family changes.
And what's the difference between having a will and having a trust?
So a will basically guarantees probate. So if you have a will, when you pass away, everything that you own that's solely in your name is going to pass through probate, which is the legal court process to record and register your will and then make a distribution to your beneficiaries as stated in the will. It's a public process, so anybody can go look up your estate, find out what you have and who got what. It is a 6-month waiting period. You do have to file inventories and accountings with the court, and then at some point the court approves those accountings before you can make final distribution. Compared to a trust plan, which is a private plan, your trust never gets filed in a court. It's not public. There's no waiting period. The whole point of the trust is you're avoiding probate. You don't have, if it's done properly, nothing will go through the probate process. There's immediate distribution and seamless management, such as if you have a business, that's always a good plan to have, because what's called a trustee can come in and keep running your business for you, whether it's during incapacity while you're still alive or after your death, so that they can pass on assets to your beneficiaries. Another benefit is you do get asset protection by way of trust. So when you pass assets through a trust to children, that those assets are protected from if they get a divorce in the future, if anybody sues them, any judgments against them, all the money in that trust is completely protected from those possibilities.
Okay. So there's financial reasons why you would want to do it, but there's also just insurance type levels that you would consider doing a trust.
Right. So a trust, really, we don't look at how much, there's no limit of income of assets or minimum or maximum. It's really a matter of what the goals or the objectives are of the family. If the family has, younger children or even children in their 20s and they don't want them to get large sums of money when they're 25, we might want to put it in a trust. Or if a family has a child who may have a history of drug abuse or substance abuse, we definitely don't want to give outright distribution of the inherited money to that child. We want to make sure it's in trust so that that money will last for that person's lifetime or however long the parents want it to last, to make sure that the money goes to the child and it's not wasted. Similar, if you have a disabled child, there's certain things that we need to do to make sure that that child remains eligible for certain benefits, and they don't lose those benefits. So we would use a trust plan for that type of situation. So like I said, it just depends on the family dynamics.
What is the name of that trust when there is a child that has special needs? I'm drawing a blank on it.
Well, it's called either a special needs trust or a supplemental needs trust.
I think it was a special needs trust that we did for a gentleman who was in a nursing home. He was a young man, but he was in a nursing home where he would remain. And the assets, they were going to take everything. So they wanted to put a trust together so that they wouldn't be able to take everything and that he would be able to have money slowly throughout the years. Am I changing the story there, or?
No, that's a similar situation. So let's say you have a special needs child who's handicapped and they're never going to be able to support themselves. If a grandparent or a parent leaves them even $50,000, they would lose all of their government benefits and assistance because you can only have $2,000 in assets. So the way to do that is we would divert that money to a special needs trust, also called a supplemental needs trust. And that money would be available to use for all of the supplemental needs that the state doesn't provide while still maintaining their eligibility. So they get all the benefits, because it's devastating if someone like that loses their medical assistance and all of their health insurance. I mean, that could be hundreds of thousands of dollars a year that they would lose until they spend all that money, and then they'd have to reapply and get reinstated. So we can use those types of trusts to avoid those situations and protect that money for that person's needs.
I think that's so important and a key, because I don't know very many people that know that there is such a thing as that. And it came to me because this gentleman was a client of mine. And I was talking to him and he was sharing some things with me, the story. This was years ago, so I'm drawing a blank on some of the story, but he shared the story with me. It just didn't sound right. I'm like, this can't be happening. There have to be some protections. And I reached out to a couple of different people. And just because I reached out, I learned about that. But he didn't even know that because it wasn't something that he had explored because there was just no knowledge of it. So that's why I think these type of calls are so important, because there's a lot of people that are in need. I mean, the numbers that we just shared are staggering. And I am fearful that that people don't have A, any plans together, but B, the right plans together. And that's why I appreciate having you, Tara, because I know from experience with you that you dig deep to learn what it is that a family needs, because every single family is different. There is not one will or estate plan that fits everybody. So I just appreciate that you dig in to get to the root of what everything is. One of the other reasons that this call is so important to me is everything is perfect. All families are wonderful, loving families until someone passes away and then claws come out. And I've seen it, and I've seen beautiful families come together someone passes away, and then all of a sudden everybody wants to come after their money. Well, they weren't around when it was time to care for the person, but certainly after they pass, they come together. I've seen it too many times. So when I have clients that are, they've made some sort of change, I just always encourage them, talk to an estate attorney, get all your stuff together. You're married, you're divorced, you have a child, you've got a special needs child. Whatever it is, it's not about how much money you have. It's so much larger than that. So I try to encourage people while I'm meeting with them in my real estate business. I just try to encourage them to just understand what is available, which brings me to point number 2. So the other myth that I wanted you to dispel for us is estate planning is for people who are just aging. They think an estate plan is planning to die. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I mean, definitely not. So as part of an estate plan, there are 4 basic pieces. You're going to, have your will or your trust. A will only takes effect after you've passed. A trust it doesn't only it takes effect after you pass, but it also provides for your incapacity. So a trust is effective now. Even if you're incapacitated, that's what's taking effect and that's what's enforceable and going to control. Whereas a will is only when you die. But other than the will and the trust, you're also going to have your financial power of attorney, which is only effective while you're alive, and your healthcare power of attorney, an advanced directive, which again is only effective while you're alive. Those documents basically die with you, and then your will would kick in if that's what you had. So, it's really important. I'll just give you an example. I had one of my parents' friends had a business, a contracting business, and he was in a parking lot. I mean, he was only, I think, maybe 60 years old, and he had a massive stroke. Kind of out of nowhere, he had a massive stroke. He was in the hospital in a coma, and he had employees to pay. He had probably 10 or 15 employees. So meanwhile, there was no financial power of attorney. And if he had had that in place, his wife could have gone in and paid the employees and run the business and done what she was able to do pending this, this crisis. But she wasn't able to. So we had to go through the process of potentially getting a guardianship and, getting a court appointed an order to give her the power to do these things. He passed away in the process, but that's what you want to avoid. So if you have just a basic power of attorney, that would avoid that. But I will preface that with saying that, it's also dangerous. I say basic power of attorney. No power of attorney is really basic. So if you just go on a computer and plug in your name, it's going to spit out just a form, but that may not be what you need, because there are special provisions that are needed if we're going to do long-term care planning or Medicaid planning. We have to add extra provisions and extra powers. Selling real estate, this, you have to have extra powers to sell real estate. Just a form may not do the trick. So, there are a lot of complexities and nuances when you're looking at it, even kind of like the most basic of documents.
You bring me to a good question. There are people that just don't have a whole lot of money and they want to do planning. Is it okay to go to Zoom, print out all of these documents, or Zoom or whatever that's called, print out all the documents and do it themselves?
I mean, if you have, if you basically have a car and a bank account, maybe that would suffice. If you have young children, if you have life insurance, retirement accounts, anything of substance, which is your home, and you want to make sure it's done right, I just don't advise it, because those aren't customized to you. They're basically plug in a name, plug in your kids' names, and that spits out a document, which there's no cookie, there's just no such thing as a cookie cutter estate plan. I mean, every one I do is different in some fashion, in one way or the other. I never have the same plan that has the exact same provisions for every person. It just rarely happens.
I was talking with somebody who wanted to do it that way. They wanted to save the money and not go to an attorney. And I hear the same thing on the real estate side. I'm going to sell it on my own to save the money. But when you think about the cost versus the risk of not having the proper plan and the consequence of not having the proper plan, there's no comparison. It doesn't make any sense to download from the internet something as critical as life planning for the future generations. It doesn't make any sense to me.
And I would say you can get a standard basic will plan that's going to get you the basics of what you need for probably around $1,000, depending on the area that you live in. Baltimore City, DC, it's going to be more. But that's kind of around what you'd pay. So, that's relatively nominal cost, which is going to protect your family. And that's with the, kind of a basic plan. And then depending on the complexities and nuances, you're going to pay more than that. But it still is basically, I think someone had referred to it, it's basically the cost of a weekend getaway for you and your partner, your spouse, to get your entire estate plan in place to protect your family and avoid, avoid these terrible things from happening in the future.
Right. Okay. Number 3, everything will go to my spouse when I die anyway, so I don't need a plan. Tell me about that.
That is definitely not true. And I give you one example. I had a older lady who came in. She had married her husband. She was an au pair from Scotland. And she came over and married her husband about 45 years ago. And he had 3 young daughters that she raised. She raised these girls as her own. And he passed away. Unfortunately, he had the house in his name only, and he didn't have a will. So when she came to me thinking that, she was going to, everything would go to her, I had the unfortunate job of telling her that that is not how it was going to go under Maryland law, that under Maryland law, basically the law is she would get the first 15,000 plus 50% of the balance. So there wasn't enough money for her to buy her own house from the estate. And the 3 daughters decided that, they really could use that money and they needed it. So they did not, they didn't give it to her. They wanted their money. So we had to sell the house and sell, basically liquidate all the assets and give the 3 girls their half of the estate. And then, my client wasn't able to live in the home that she had lived in for 45 years. And that was it. So that was I know that was not what the husband would have, wanted and intended, but they didn't pre-plan or have anything in place. So that's kind of a sad story of what can happen.
I had something similar. I sold a home to a beautiful, lovely couple. The gentleman was on the sale, and he sold, and he had a girlfriend of 15 or 20 years. They've been together forever. Happy, wonderful, beautiful couple. I sold their home. They were finally retiring. She worked at home. She just was raising the children at home, and he worked outside of the home. So they went to South Carolina to retire, where he had planned on retiring his entire life. He gets there, has a massive heart, healthy as an ox, thought he was healthy as an ox, had a massive heart attack, passed away. A year later, she calls me and says, do you have any information to prove that I lived in the house? I said, you got to give me more information. Tell me about this. Her husband passed away. They didn't have any plans done, and the family wanted everything. So she was going to be homeless with not one penny because there was nothing in her name. Everything was in his name. It was a situation where they just didn't do any planning, just like what you said. And now her significant other, who she has lived with for 20 years, is now gone. She doesn't have one penny and doesn't know what any of her rights are, if there's any.
Yeah, and in Maryland, if you're not married, you have no right to even make a spousal election against an estate. So everything would go by operation of law, which if you're not married, then she's not a legal relative under the law. So everything would go to either his parents or his children. So yeah,
that's exactly what happened. So now I have no significant other, died like in a split second, and I don't even have one penny, nor a house. They were going to take the house. So I can't emphasize this enough, because I have the, it's not a privilege to help these people. It's one of those things that I get so sick inside to hear the stories, and I can't do anything about it. So I hear these stories, and that's why it's become a passion of mine to help people to plan, and just to do, no one wants to talk about this. I hate talking about it, but it's such an important thing because the consequence is just too large to ignore.
Well, and that's the thing, when people, if you pre-plan and you're doing it, while you have your sense and your thoughts about, you're not in a crisis, you're not, someone's not in the hospital, and you don't have your mind about you to really make informed, calm decisions. You want to do that ahead of time. And, like it's sorry, my phone rang. I don't want the people to come into my offices, this is where they end up saying, oh my gosh, this is what happened. and they want me to tell them good news. And then a lot of times I have to give them the bad news saying, there's nothing I can do because this is the law, and, you know, you're not going to get anything. So it's a terrible spot to be in when they haven't done pre-planning and then they come in asking me to help them. And sometimes there's just nothing I can do to help.
Your hands are tied.
Yeah.
Your hands are tied. Okay, question number 4. My family and I are close. We touched on this already. My family and I are close. They know my wishes. I'm fine. I don't need the paperwork. True or false?
Yeah, that
don't
is
need to do
definitely
anything.
false.
The family knows what I'm looking for.
Yeah, that's definitely false. I mean, especially with, let's say, you know, even if you're you know, you either become incompetent, you know, have dementia, Alzheimer's, or you just have an accident, or you're in the hospital, you know, now with a ventilator and you really can't communicate or make decisions. You know, you're just relying on other people and you to make these decisions. And a lot of times, let's say with a healthcare power of attorney, you might have 2 siblings or 3 siblings. Let's say one has a different opinion than the other 2. And, you know, who are the doctors going to look to? Who's going to make the decision? If one says one thing, the other says the other thing, everybody's kind of in a catch-22. But if you have that legal document, you're saying, no, this is the person you need to listen to. This is the person that I want to make my decisions. Then that's, you know, that's the person the doctors are going to listen to. And like with regard to, you know, your will, it needs to be in writing, because I have people come in all the time and say, oh, I just want to leave everything to my daughter and I trust her and I know she'll share with her brothers and sisters. And that does not happen. So I say, no, that is not how we're going to do it, because that's not how it's going to end up, because they end up in my office after the fact and they're all fighting and then they hate each other and then the family is destroyed and they never speak to one another again. You know, so we want to make sure, you know, I say this is why we're going to write it down. You tell me what you want and then we'll make it happen.
Because there's no disadvantage to having it written down, but there's a lot of disadvantages to not.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So my when my father was sick many years ago, 13 years ago or 14 years ago, the time that we were planning for what should we or shouldn't we do was in the hospital when they said you have to have a quintuple bypass surgery. And the family, who we're not planners and we would never want to talk about such things because all of us are a little emotional. We don't want to bring that topic up. So instead of talking about it in advance, when you can have logical conversations and lack of emotion, we did it while we were in the hospital when they said, okay, here are your choices. Do you want to do this? Do you want to do this? In the event of this, do you want that? That is no time. I promise you, that is not a time to try to figure all of that out.
No, definitely
so
not.
ever since then, we did it with my mother. I hated the conversation. I hated every second of the conversation, but we had the conversations with my mother in advance to say, Mom, if this happens, what do you want to do? If this happens, what do you want to do? So we had it all planned out in advance, because I don't ever want to have to make those decisions again, sitting in a hospital in a clinical setting where we can't have just more logical space to figure the answers out to these questions. So
Right.
I encourage everybody on the call to share this, get out, talk to an attorney, learn from them, learn from, you know, the stories, Tara, that you and I have talked about, endless stories about people that failed to plan. And you know the saying that if you fail to plan, you're planning to fail.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's pretty applicable here. And I can't think of a more appropriate time to have this conversation when so many people's lives have been lost from a virus.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people that did not plan appropriately and are going to be casualties of this. I think we have a question here, Tara. Give me 1 second. Hey, I'm getting a little bit high tech here. Okay, Erica, thank you for your question. It says, I can attest to that, Diane, 100%. Even as the associate in Tara's office, I have done this 4 times in my own family. It's too stressful and emotional to do it in a crisis. Yep, 100%. So do it in advance.
Yeah. And, you know, I would say some people say, well, my parents don't want to talk about this. They just don't want to talk about it. And, you know, one of my suggestions is, you know, really maybe approach it with them saying, you know, don't do this for you. Let's not do this for you, but do it for us. You know, give this gift to us so that we are not in a position. Because I think a lot of older people are more willing to do things for their children or others than they are for themselves.
Great way to do that. Yeah.
You know, that's a way to approach it, is to say, this would be such a gift for me to not put me in this position, or us. So can we please just have this conversation to take this burden off of us?
That's a great way to put it. Great perspective. I'm going to ask you guys, if anybody wants to ask any questions, please feel free. Hi, Lori. If anybody wants to ask any questions, please feel free. And in the meantime, Tara, wrap this up for us. So tell me just the documents that would be important in an estate plan.
So for an estate plan, you should have, at a minimum, a financial power of attorney, appointment of healthcare agent, and an advance directive, otherwise called a living will, and a will or a trust. And if you have children under the age of 18, you should also have a nomination of guardian.
Okay. And we have a question. If you set up a trust for children, do you then need to specify the trust as a beneficiary for life insurance and other accounts?
So yes, so generally, in order to protect the money from life insurance and other assets, we would want to either fund the trust with those assets, or make sure that they're going to end up in the trust after death. So in the case of life insurance benefits, we usually will name the trust as the beneficiary, as long as the trust is, you know, properly, it's already been created. Retirement accounts are handled a little bit differently, so I won't get into that, but they have to be handled in a special way to make sure you take advantage of tax benefits for the distributions.
Any other further questions on that, Lori? Another question, if you own your own business and something happens to you and you have a trustee who has been appointed to run the business, do you still need to have legal representation available to help that trustee either close the business or to sell it?
Yes, I would definitely have, I would advise that person to consult with an attorney, can help them with the trust administration, because there are other resources out there that help people run businesses, that help them, you know, market and sell businesses. So there's a lot of resources available, as opposed to just closing up shop and liquidating everything. So I would definitely consult with someone who has that experience and knowledge.
Okay. And Lori, in your final words, what is the #1 mistake that people make in estate planning?
Not having it. Not having an estate plan.
I had a feeling that was going to be the answer. I had a feeling that was going to be the answer.
Yeah, or trying to do it on their own, and it's either not a valid, you know, it's not effective, it's not signed properly and executed, or it just doesn't do what they are intending it to do, because, you know, and they're not lawyers, they don't know how to write these documents, so, you know, I don't expect them to. But a lot of times, if you try to do it on your own, it's not going to do what you are hoping that it's going to do necessarily.
Right. Well, thank you. I don't think we have any other questions. Tara, thank you so much for your time today. If people needed to get a hold of you, or they wanted to ask you further questions, how can they get a hold of you?
You can call us at Frame and Frame. Our website is frameandframe.com. So it's FRAMEANDFRAME.com. And you can also call us at 410-255-0373.
Awesome. Okay, everyone, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it. Please share this with people. It's really important information. I don't want to see anybody go through a situation where the unexpected became a nightmare. So please share it. And thank you, Tara. Thank you so much to you.
Thank you so much for having me. This was great.
Excellent. Thanks for coming. See you guys.
Bye-bye.